The best Kumite team finals ever happened in the history of karate. They were tied, and at the end they had to pick an extra fighter.
Remember the final day match between
Wayne Otto and Gil Cherdillo.
We mentioned names of the older generation like Otto, Pina, Viamonte. We have to probably mention Benetello too, that good fights, and Ivan Leal and all that. Now we go to Aghayev. On the Aghayev era, what do you remember his biggest contribution to the sport?
Europeans are tall, long legs, long arms, and they realized we need to do our own style to fight. I remember when we saw for the first time Ticky Donovan's team Kumite from England, their abilities, long legs, they start doing 1, 2, and then going out, sweeping or kicking to their face.
Around that time is also when they start changing the rules to get out more points, trying to make it more appealing for spectators.
The first thing that we had to talk is the rules, how everything started. The mirror system, from the point of view of the spectators, was confused. Finally, after 2 years of trying, Tommy Morris presented at the Paris Open the final proposal from WKF to change the rules.
You have athletes that follow two big results like Luigi Busa. Newer era where you have also big names like Steven Da Costa will have 3 world championships, and now you get the Egyptian athletes having really good results like Abdallah from -75 and then Youssef -84. From back then to what do you see now that is different, and where do you see that heading in the future? Javier Mantilla, a well-renowned coach, a Olympic medalist as a coach, chairman of PKF referee committee for many years, also member of WKF committee for many years, and a coach that have been able to get a lot of success not only in kata but also in kumite, and not only in one part of the world but in many different countries and different continents. So today we would like to go over the evolution of kumite on all these years with all your experience. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the beginning and how you see the change when everything started from your point of view.
Well, karate competition started in the 70s, okay, when everything started under the WUCO, the World Union of Karate Organizations. Basically, it was a transition between the traditional competitions in Japan to now to the international level. The first thing that we had to talk is the rules, how everything started. It was with Kumite, not with Kata, and the system that they use for the game was with 4 corner judges and 1 referee. Exactly the same like today, but with 2 different colors. That was red and white, Aka and Shiro, and now we have blue and red. That concept, stays alive for maybe a few years, but then the countries start competing. We start having more athletes, more federations involved, and the development of the athletes and the competition style from that traditional maybe position of the athletes in the center of the ring, because at the beginning was only 1 full point, what we call Ippon Shobu. Okay, so 1 full point finish the match, or 2 wasaris, 2 half points. The competition or the way that the athletes move was really more looking for one technique, like one killing technique to dominate and to finish the match.
So if I understand correctly, by being only 1 or 2 points, it was more kind of scenario of fighting for life. In order that you're gonna have to, like terminate your opponent instead of trying to score different points. Is that kind of the idea of it?
Yeah, it was like killing point because it's you or me. That was the concept. And the way that we used to fight was too passive, too static. The concentration was following the other one, but we didn't see bouncing back then. It was just one line to attack and then be effective with 1 point and try to do a full point because the match ends. So that concept stays for a while, for maybe a few years. But then as soon as we have more countries involved, those athletes, start moving a little bit more, especially the non-Asian athletes. At the beginning was one line, like forward, back. But then we started seeing the 45 degrees angle, the called Tai Savaki, moving angles to avoid the lines. So when that happens and the athletes start moving, immediately the rule change. The rule change in regarding what? The officials. From four corners, we believed that in that moment that was convenient to be more close to the action and also allow the referee to move more and try to follow those two athletes. So then create the mirror system. The mirror system, as the word says mirror, it was the referee here and one judge in front of me. So the athletes were positioned in this side, line, and referee, judge. And we used to move as a mirror. If you move to your right, I move to my left. So in this. So we were allowed to move size, but also rotation with the athletes. If they move, we move. So the main idea was to get closer and be able to follow the athletes that they start moving to get a clear concept or clear scoring techniques. That works for a while.
So just to clarify on the mirror system, I want to clarify to the viewers that haven't been in karate for a long time, maybe younger viewers. When you do mirror system, there is the two judges on the match, but also just one kansa on the back. So in reality, you needed only 3 referees. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. They reduced the number from 6 to 3 less officials. I think we thought it was better because the new mobility, the new dynamic of the matches. But then everything started working really well. Evolution of the athletes, evolution of karate, development of these athletes, they start moving a lot. And then what happened with the mirror system in few matches and then suddenly in a lot of matches, you notice that the referee and the judge was like basically running. So from the point of view of the spectators, maybe was confused. There were like 4 people in the ring, but 2 with gi, 2 with the suits, but they moving like crazy, and what was going on. The athletes started bouncing and moving a lot, doing double step, sliding a lot, and in that moment, I think the development of our sport immediately made an impact, and we have to change again the position or the idea of how are we going to deal with these guys.
The athletes always dictate what the changes need to be, how they're reacting, how they're moving. Not to give my age, but I understand exactly what you're saying, and that's why I wanted to clarify to the younger viewers. When I started competing, it was on the mirror system. A lot of times you'll be fighting and you hit the referee by accident because of the movement. So I can see by experience also how that maybe rule needed to change to be able to adjust to the athletes. But
yeah, because we're changing the rule, changing the position of the officials, but at the same time, they wanted to keep the original idea, keeping the Ippon Shobu, and then start the Shobu Sanbon, 3 points. It was a transition in between. We fight for 1 point, and we start doing like in this current date, fighting for 3 points, 3 full points. I mean, regarding the scores, not the total of scores, and but keeping 2 different maybe systems. This evolution create the new position of the officials. Then Wuko back then say, okay, we need to fix this. How we can fix this? We need to have the referee in the center still. The athletes are moving everywhere in the tatami, but the referee is allowed to move only in this side. So the referee says, Ajime, step back and trying to be in this line, parallel to the main table. And then we appoint 2 judges in the corners. So we create now 2 judges in the corners, Aka and Chiro, and a referee. But the referee only was allowed to move right here. They didn't want to see the referee around like before. So that's 80, end of the 80s, we still have a mirror system. I think the last time that we saw mirror system, that was the World Championships in Cairo, 1988. Then we went to Mexico in 90, and I think 92 started the big, competition change, the big era when sports science was applied to the Kumite side. First, because the athletes start moving a lot. Traditional way in the 70s, we see just one line, double step, or just one counter attack, one Yakuzuki or one Kisami. And then we the next one that we saw is the double, a Kisami Yako or Yako Kisami. That was basically the competition. One kick, once in a while, the back fist, the Huracan. But then, yeah, Mike Geddes, even Yoko Geddes back then. We didn't see too many Mawashi Geddes. The contact to the face was more from hand techniques than kicking techniques in that. And also, we have to remember that we didn't use gloves at the beginning. No gloves, no chin pads, okay? No protection. It was a traditional, a wild concept, okay? And we used to hit hard. The level of the degree of contact was really, really high. But then with the years, everything was reduced in order to prevent injuries and to promote this as a sport. But Europe, of course, Europe started getting bigger and bigger. So many federations, and they realized that their bodies were different than the Asian bodies. Karate came from Japan. I always have to say this, mention this, but their bodies are different than the rest of the world. So Europeans are tall, long legs, long arms, and they realize we need to do our own karate, our own style to fight. We can be in one line, we can pretend to be in a lower stance because our legs are long. We can do that. I always mention that this is my personal point of view. I think Ticky Donovan, the former coach of the England karate team, is the person that I think is the one who changed everything. He has a good knowledge, a good idea, former athlete, but then he saw the potential of his athletes recruiting tall guys, tall, skinny guys. So I remember when we saw for the first time Ticky Donovan's team Kumite from England, and they were lined up. They were like a basketball team. It was a team fighting at the World Championships, but average probably of every single fighter, I can say 6'2". We didn't see that before in karate.
Now, is that the era where the famous Otto?
Yes.
Is on that team, the famous?
The team of Wayne Otto, yeah, Jeff Thompson, also famous, and Ian Cole, okay. Then Willie Thomas, he's a current coach of the Hong Kong team right now. I think the gold era of England in karate competition. They won 6 titles in a row, 6 world championships. Yeah, they were dominating. And basically, what Ticky Donovan did is, okay, we're tall, we're longer, let's start bouncing. That was the first thing. You see those athletes, imagine a 6'2" guy against a 5'1" Asian athlete or South American athlete, okay? 5'6" maybe against 6'2", 6'3", you can see the difference. The visual, as soon as they in the line waiting for Ajime, you can see big difference. These ones that are skinny, they're more like they have a better, athletic cut. That's why tall. And then they start bouncing, vertical jumping, like bouncing, and you can notice also and see the guy looks even bigger than 6'2" when they start bouncing. I think the first one they were trying, and they start jumping a lot, and he wanted everybody to see a big monster, basically, fighting against, like David and Goliath, something like that. And from the karate that we used to have before, for maybe the 15 first years, doing the 1-2, the double step, so bouncing, trying to create more fake, double step, and then using their abilities, long legs, they start doing 1-2, and then going out, sweeping or kicking to the face. That was amazing. Everything changed because you see all those guys, big guys, bouncing, getting close, adjusting distance, just not to do the hand technique, to do the sweeping technique or the kicking technique.
Absolutely. So you start seeing 2, 3 techniques and being more like a.
The 1-2, it was a preparation for the sweeping and then to finish, or the 1 and 2 was a preparation for kicking to the face.
And I'm thinking that around that time is also when they start changing the rules to allow more points, because now the fighting becomes more attractive, and if you are the organization trying to make karate more appealing for spectators, then you want to make it like a show, right?
But I mean that 1992 Granada, Spain, the World Championships, I was there competing, and I remember as a Venezuelan athlete, we were trying to see what's going on here. They move a lot. They look like a birds. They look like flying, and like they, using their wings. Because we didn't know how we start copying that. Remember, we went back to Venezuela and we would start bouncing or jumping, but we didn't have exactly the idea. Again, we didn't have the training. We just saw. It was amazing to see, those European athletes, because after England, the French Karate Federation also, they have probably, they copy, they got the idea of Donovan, and they start also bringing tall athletes. And when you see those guys, even after that, the French team fighting against countries like us or Asian countries, India or Malaysia, it was the difference.
It's a night and day, yeah, night and day, and also not just aside, but the skills, the skill level,
and the use of their legs was amazing because they create space. Everybody were protecting now the faces because they were using a lot, techniques like kicking techniques. But took us 92. Everything started changing when everybody followed them. After England, the French karate team start being the competition for them. I remember Africa, Sun City, '96. It was in my opinion, the best Kumite team finals ever happened in the history of karate.
Okay, so England against France.
England and France, Wayne Otto, Ian Cole, still around. Okay, but that was probably the last one for them. But we have a new team, new French.
Is that when Christopher Pina comes, or that's a different generation?
The team of Christophe Pina, Gilles Cherdieu, Alain Lehete, who was the captain, Roman Anselmo, Michael Brown, and Alexander Viamonte. It's when Alexander Viamonte started, yeah.
So it's younger, yeah.
That was an amazing finals because England was dominating. Even in Sun City, England was leading the general standings, and they won the general standing with 6 gold medals. But they lost in finals with France, and then they were tied. And at the end, they had to pick an extra fighter to decide the match, an additional 5 after 5 to decide who was the winner. And that match back then went to an overtime, what we used to call Enchosen. So that's why I said this is the best one ever for me. You see 5 fighters, the match ends tie.
You remember the final, the Enchosen match?
Wayne Otto and Gilles Cherdieu. And Gilles Cherdieu scored in the Enchosen, and then the French team won. Yeah, that was really a really amazing match, and they were like the leaders of the world. And that year, I was amazing because PKF got a bronze medal in team with Curacao. I think that was the best ever result for the Curacao team was.
Curacao is interesting because being part of the Netherlands, they have the influence of European athletes and European systems, so that explains a lot, yeah?
So that was '96, and then after the championships, they start thinking in what to do next. Okay, how we can improve this. They're moving a lot. We need to add something for the competition to try to sell more for TV, for different events, trying to get spectators. Then in Europe, I start doing some experiments, and '98 is when finally, after 2 years of trying, Tommy Morris present at the Paris Open in '98 the final proposal from WKF to change the rules, change colors from red to red and white to blue and red, okay, and then adding one more judge, so three judges. So the referee was here, center, but two judges in the middle of the tatami, in the sides, and one in front of the referee. It was like a combination of the two previous systems. There was a mirror because the referee was moving here, but we had one judge in front, mirror system, and he moved the corners to the center. Okay, it's a combination of two, and that's that's how he described. Let's try to do something different.
It's almost like pick the best of both system and trying to make something different.
And then, additional to that, we start with the new scoring level: 3, 2, 1. 3 for Joan kicks, face, ura, nawashigeri, okay, and also takedown techniques, sweeping techniques, following by scoring technique, and then nihon 2 points for the kicking, the chudan area kicking techniques, and then hand techniques 1 point. The idea of this system, as Tommy always promotes, is we need to try to get more spectacular and techniques, more dynamic karate. We need to sell our sport.
More eye-catching techniques, make it more spectacular. The spectators want to watch it.
There's a lot of hand techniques. Okay, so only a few maybe countries they're doing a lot of kicking, but we want karate to be in the order of 3, 2, 1, because following also sports. You see basketball, you have 3 points, 2 points. Everybody look for 3. So he wanted, or the WKF wanted, that the athlete will be looking only for 3 spectacular techniques.
Yeah? And I'm guessing that's also when takedowns, throwdowns, they become more popular because it's a 3-point technique. I'm sure that changed a little bit the dynamics too, and people training more for it, and some countries being specializing more of that. Do you remember any of that part?
Yeah, well, in Paris and IDA, I remember I was a referee. For me, I feel like it was an amazing experience to see the final test, to be involved in the final test, to officiate 3, 2, 1, because change everything. And also they add the leading by A finish the match. So my first match as a referee trying this new system, I remember I had Tomas Guerrero from Spain, a former medalist at the world level several times, and an athlete from Tunisia. And I was so nervous because this is something new. And now it's 3-2. But the first maybe few seconds, like 30 seconds, the first action, I got 3 flags for Sanbon. And it was a nice kick, beautiful, clean kick to the face. And not only that he scored 3, then he scored 2. The match ends because he was leading 8-0. So everything is new. Yeah, the colors are working. As a referee, you didn't have to move a lot. You're just moving in one line because you had to give space. For the first time, we had that in the junior and the first junior world championship in Sofia in Bulgaria. 1999 is when WKF for the first time have the 3 judges and the blue and red, and everything starts from there.
Okay. That was I'm sure that was an interesting experience being one of the first ones to do it and referee a match like that. We have talked a little bit about the rules, but then we have to go back. You mentioned Herrero from Spain, and you mentioned some big names. Bring me some memories, because as a kid, as a big karate fan, and I will always watch those tapes, the VHS at that time, and watch Otto, Pina, and then of course Viamonte and all those big names. And also then I remember, and I'm telling you names, that way you can walk me through sometimes. We have Ivan Leal, we had a Turkey guy that I might say the name wrong, Alagas, I believe. And I remember being a kid and having training as a kid and training with people that were on the national team, and they go compete in the national, and they will come back and they'll say, this guy from Turkey, Alagas, he looks like a fan like me, like kicking everywhere, doing many different things. And I think that's one of the pioneers of taking things to another level. On all those names, can you kind of identify the timing when they were like maybe winning? Or
yeah, well, back to the England team in the 80s is when they start dominating, and when you see more sweeping techniques like Wayne Otto. Wayne Otto was famous, good hand techniques, but inside sweeping, strong sweeping technique, and he was a world champion 3 times.
Yes, sorry to interrupt, but when you're talking about sweeping at that time, when Otto super famous too. If I remember correctly, it was more sweeping on pulling the foot, maybe sweeping, but it's not the sweeping that we see now with the takes down.
No, it was a real sweeping. No hand contact. It was like getting inside and going out, and then hooking the other one and yes, make the other one fly. Yeah, he was famous for that. And also from the same years was Emmanuel Pinda, former French athlete that was famous for his ki and for his sweeping techniques. Emmanuel Pinda is one of the top fighters back then, and Jeff Thompson also. Jeff Thompson from England. And after that, Spain has a monster competitor, Emmanuel Egea.
Absolutely, yes.
Egea is another, multiple times champion, 3 times world champion. And that was the era between Otto and Egea, the leaders, the ones who were like really leading the competition at the world level and, of course, in Europe.
I remember being a kid and Egea having his own line of equipment.
Yeah.
It's like glove. And I remember it was a big privilege if you have like glove that it's like the hair brand, and it was like, but I remember, yeah.
And Egea, what was amazing for Egea, comparing to the English and French athletes, he's not too tall. He was like a short guy. I can say, after Egea retired, another similar fighter was Aghayev. Short guy, powerful guy who used to compete in kilo and open. Not the same skills, but I'm comparing the size. Okay. Yeah.
Now we're moving to the little middle generation, not the current, but the middle, because I'm probably most viewers know Aghayev and know those names, but we're going a little back. So now
amazing because you mentioned Uldun Alagas from Turkey, and Uldun Alagas and then Christoph Pina were I think the pioneers of kicking techniques. Uldun Alagas was famous because as soon as the referee says Ajime, he started using his front leg and rising his knee up and repeating the kick like this. Pa, 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 like a window. Rara, and then he kicked you, front kick. And then Christoph Pina, he was a former Taekwondo athlete, and then he enjoyed the French team. He adjusts Taekwondo kicks to the karate competition. It was so spectacular. It was everybody liked to see Pina back in those years in the 90s because he looked like an helicopter. The way that he did 360s, right, left, yeah, because that came from Taekwondo. But also that made people to start copying then, and of course the rule had to change because now the value of that difficulty. That's what Tommy was saying. So we have this in karate for so many years, but we didn't use it. And we give the value that they deserve because it's not the same. Let's talk about the physical aspect of this. It's not the same energy, not the same, hard, effort when you're doing a hand technique than a kicking technique. The level of condition is different. And why we used to do a lot of hand techniques? Again, karate came from Japan. They have short legs. The ability of the Asian athletes is more hand techniques because they don't have long legs. So those guys were really leading the competition, thinking about how spectacular those matches were. And then after Pina, Alexander Biamonti, also from the former French national team, is the next one who really was amazing to see because the takedown techniques, they're allowed to grab, to throw. A lot of people complain about during those years because in some cases we look like judo. That's the problem. When everything changed, the athletes, of course, and the coaches are trying to break the rules. We're allowed to grab, we're allowed to throw, to do the takedown techniques, but then we start seeing a lot of clinching. And that's why everything changed again. When you saw clinching, they were losing time, no action, and then we had to separate the fighters, and the competition started, being boring because every single action, clinch. So they start penalizing clinch. And since we started having a lot, injuries because of the takedown techniques, all right, and then we had to avoid or prohibit it, the use of two hands. And that happens in the era of Rafael Aghayev. Rafael Aghayev was an amazing athlete doing takedown techniques.
And that's a good transition right there from the older generation, the older era, to the new era, because I think Agayev brings a new era, and that's probably the most famous name that younger generation still remember or maybe seen competing. We mentioned names of the older generation like Otto, Pina, Viamonte. We have to probably mention Benetello too, that good fights, and Ivan Leal and all that. Now we go to Agayev. So Agayev, you mentioned the takedown. Do you think that's his biggest contribution to the sport, or what can you tell us about Agayev and how he changed the game?
Biggest contribution of Aghayev, the way that he controls his upper body avoiding techniques. He was like a snake, moving just head, neck, you know, shoulders, and avoiding and being able to react and be successful. Because it was amazing to see him. Maybe his first 8 years, he was beating everybody like by eight. Of course, after so many years, injuries, and athletes start knowing him, study him, yeah, he started to to play a little bit more conservative. But his experience was amazing, and one of the reasons that everybody copy. I remember the grabbing immediately take down it because he used to do a lot, but he was doing a technique, and our athletes, for example, they copy. Always they only want to grab. They don't do anything else. He created it's an era, like golden era of karate. Is yeah.
So Agayev, then you have athletes that follow to the newer era where you have also big names around that time, like Luigi Busa from Italy. Then you have, of course, Steven da Costa, which also have 3 world championships. And now you get to now when you can see Egyptian athletes having really good results, like Abdallah from -75, and then Yusuf -84. You have the athlete from Jordan too, Al Jafari, having good results. And the reason I mention these guys is because they have kind of that spectacular movement and dynamics. From back then to now, what do you see now that is different, and where do you see that heading in the future?
Well, from uh, from 98 when we changed the scoring levels 3, 2, 1. I think we need to start from 98 because it's when really everything changed. When you give different value to the techniques, it's the evolution, the development. Uh, it's 98, so it's over more than 25 years already. But still, the ones that you mentioned, the stars in our sport, is because they know how to play the game using the scoring levels. You can see the difference between Aghayev, Youssef in these days, Al Jafari, even Horuna, okay, back to Aghayev, Beamonte, okay, Ansel, Steven da Costa. You can see them as a complete fighters. Because I think everybody, all the athletes, they have skills, they have talent. But the problem is how they can use their talent, if they're effective, with those skills. These guys were super effective. Same as used to be Benetello kicking, Pina kicking, even Leal, okay, kicking to the face in those years. It's how they create, or they create their own era, their own space. They dominate those years because of simple reason. They use all the techniques. They they're not just, they don't have a limits. Like it's only hand techniques. It's only one technique. Okay, I can mention famous athletes like you already talk about Otto. Okay, hand technique, sweeping. He can kick a lot. Gilcher that's it's one of the best examples of one full effective technique. He used a hand technique like over, like Suki over. Amazing. Everybody knew that he was coming and he scores that. Yeah. So I think skills is everywhere, but it's the training back to a bit the key for everybody, and how you implement those techniques in the field of in the real game.
Absolutely. And I know, there's more conversation to be had about the rules and about the changes and things that might be coming. We might have to do another episode to talk about those things because we can talk for so many hours. To finish today, I'm gonna put you in a bad spot and I'm gonna ask you. I know most of these guys are your friends and you know them for so many years. So I know they won't be offended if you just say a name or not another one, but I have to ask if you have to mention three names of Kumite athletes that you were your favorite to watch and that had any influence on you. Three names.
Well, I think with three names is tough, but names who made an impact in karate or the top three is different. Yeah.
You pick three and you tell me who those three are and what that three means to you. And again, you know these guys, and I'm gonna put you in a bad spot, but just go for it. They understand.
Okay. Best ever for me to see, to really enjoy watching that fighter, Rafael Aghayev. Yeah, no questions. He was a monster. He's the real god of karate, the greatest of all time. It's not about only the titles. It's about to see that little guy moving and creating and with no fear. I had one experience that when I realized this is the guy. I went to the European Championships in 2005 as a guest. And I didn't see Aghayev fighting in kilo division. And he was really famous in 2005 because the previous year in Moscow at the European, he beat the legend, Alexander Viamonte, by 8 points in finals. Viamonte back then, I think in 2004, he was winning 9 years in a row. And then a young guy, 20 years old, beat him like nothing. So then I was expecting to see him in kilo, but then when they were lining up for open division, I look at the line, all these big guys. I remember Maniscalco from Italy, Walters from England, former world champions, a few guys from Croatia, Slovakia, Slovenia, and then the last one in the line, Rafael. This guy's going to fight open, and I was the most amazing open division that I ever see live. That was one because the other one in finals it was Aghayev against Ivan Leal. That was in Tenerife, Spain, and it was a crazy match at the end because he wasn't fighting only against Ivan. He wasn't fighting about the crowd cheering for Leal in his country. And at the end of the match, when he won, Leal showed respect to him, and they grabbed his hands and they were uh, saying thank you to the spectator. Yeah, definitely Rafael is the first one. Yeah.
And I agree with you because I had the chance also to watch Rafael competing, and it's just something different. Something unique about him is that he fear doesn't exist. You can tell that he was just such a courage athlete, and all the athletes have that. But I remember my dad used to say, being a sensei, being a coach, and all that. My dad used to say, like, to be a champion at that level, you almost have to be a little crazy. And in my opinion, I mean, it sounds funny, but you have to be like you cannot be afraid of anything. And I think that's a good way to describe Aghayev. What's your second one?
Second one, Alexander Viamonte. Yeah. I think it's like when you see the new king, finish with the old one. Yeah, like yeah, that's Viamonte was spectacular to see him. Yeah, super skilled, guy, and especially the sweeping techniques, the takedown techniques from Alexander were amazing. Yeah, and the dominance during the years. Number three, it's hard to give only one for number three, but I'm going to give you a guy who changed everything and dominate in a long time. Maybe he didn't win too many medals, but Uldon Alagas is the third one for me because he introduced something different. He won two times in different, like in between maybe 8 years. And there is I mean, I'm trying to reduce because it's also Wayne Otto, Egea, Pina. I can mention those three after him. But I think when he's the one who show, Turkey is coming. This is a new country, emerging new country in Europe. And the fighting, it was amazing to see him. in his prime. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's an amazing list, and we'll have the chance to talk more about it. But again, Sensei Javier, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for this amazing conversation and trying to help the younger generation to understand a little bit of history and the evolution of the sport in this episode, the Kumite. Thank you again.